Welcome to a beginner's tutorial on 3ds Max interface. This is a beginner's tutorial, but we will advance later on when we build vehicles, characters, and total 3D environments. So let's get started. To make it simple, I'm going to break the interface down into 4 major parts. At the top here, we have the menus. We have the main menu bar here, and we have the tools underneath in the toolbar. Then at the bottom of the interface, we have the animation panel. This is much more advanced, and we won't be touching on this until later in the tutorials. Same with the modified panel over here on the right. Once you have built your model, you can modify it using these tabs in the modified panel. Then we get to the guts of 3ds Max, the viewports. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 viewports. And this is where you will be creating your models. These are your scenes. So we will get back to this, but for now, let's begin at the top in the main menu bar. The menu bar starts with the Autodesk logo up here in the upper left-hand corner. Well, like in other programs, this is actually just the file menu. When you click it, you can choose a new file, you can save your file, save as, import, export. So that's very useful. Then we have our main menu bar next to it. In this menu bar, we can create a model. Then we can use tools to edit our model. We can group our model. We can change our views, but we can also do that in the viewport. Many of these options can be done in different ways throughout the 3ds Max interface, and each of us is just going to have to figure out what way we are comfortable with and go with it. We have the modifiers up here, but it's also in the modified panel. Animation, that's also down here. Like I said, there are several ways. Graph editors, rendering. The rendering menu also has the materials, which is very important and you'll be using quite often. The customize, max scripts, and help. Help you can get to by hitting F1, and I encourage you to do that because there is a wealth of information if you have questions, and it's a good way to learn. So below our main menu bar, we have our toolbars. And to better illustrate how we can use our tools, I am going to build a model very quickly because this tutorial is about interface and not modeling. So let's create a quick model by going to Create Standard Primitives Teapot. Click on it, and then click and drag in your viewport, and there is a teapot. So now that we have our teapot, I can show you some of the tools. Here's the selection tool. Right now our teapot is selected because we just created it. So let's click elsewhere in the scene, and now nothing is selected. Then we click on our teapot again, and there it is selected. But what if I want to move my teapot? Well, then I would go to Select and Move, and when I click on this icon, you can now see axes. We have one axis, the x-axis, we have the z-axis, and we have the y-axis. You'll also notice that the axes are down in the lower left-hand corner. We have the x, z, and y axis. So when we hover over and highlight our arrow, we can then move on the x-axis. Then, if we click on the z-axis, we can move on the z-axis. But what if I want to move unconstrained? Then I can click in the center here and I can move unconstrained. So next to our select and move icon, we have our select and rotate. When I click that, I now have circular axes, and that is so that I can move in a circular fashion on my axis. If I want to move in an unconstrained circular fashion, then I can click in the center here and move around my viewport unconstrained. But I'm going to put my teapot back to its original state and hit the undo arrow up in the upper left-hand corner. That will undo my recent move, and I can be back to my original state. So next to the select and rotate icon is the select and uniform scale, or the transform tool. When I click on that, you'll see that when I pull on my axis, axis, I can actually alter my model in some crazy ways. I can transform my model in a uniform manner by pressing in the center here, and then I can shrink, and I can enlarge, and I can shrink. But I'm not so sure I like these crazy distortions to my teapot. So I'm going to go back to my undo arrow and click back to my original state. So here I am. I have touched on the uniform scale icon, the select and rotate, the select and move, and the selection icon. Next to here is something that's very important, the selection filter pull-down menu. When your scene becomes very complex and you just want to select one thing and not bother with the other things, you can filter your selections. For instance, if I only want to select cameras, I can select cameras there. Notice then I can no longer select my model because I have cameras in my pull-down menu. So let's keep it on all so that we can select our model again. And we have touched on the main parts of the toolbar. Now, I bet you're wondering, well, what if I want to navigate around my viewport? What if I want to see the other side of my teapot? How do I do that? Well, there are several ways, and I am about to show you. If you'll notice, in each one of your viewports, you have a view cube. And on the view cube, it says front, left, top. And you guessed it, if you click on front, it will show you the front. Top, it will show you the top. Click on these arrows and it's going to bring you to each of the sides of your model and so forth. But what if you want to move around in your viewport unconstrained? Then you can click and hold on your view cube and move around unconstrained. This circle at the bottom keeps you moving around in your viewport constrained. So now I have a crazy view of my teapot. What if I want to get back to my original view? Well, in that case, you'll notice there is a house icon. Click on the house and it brings you back to your home state. So, but what if I liked this crazy movement and I wanted that to be my home state? Then I can right click on my house and set current view as home. And bam, I would have this as my current view. But I don't want to do that. I'm going to keep my default view as that. And then I'm going to show you other ways that you can navigate around your viewport. Down at the bottom here, we have the modify icon. I'm sorry, the orbit icon. And this, we can orbit around our viewport. We have the pan icon, which is a hand, and we can pan around in our viewport. And then we have the magnifying glass, which allows us to zoom in our viewport. Zoom in and out, which is great, but that's a little too much effort to go down in the lower hand corner and click on these icons. What if I wanted something easier? Well, then you can use the center scroll wheel on your mouse. If you click on it, you'll notice your cursor then turns to a hand, which is panning. I can then pan around in my viewport. I can scroll my mouse wheel, and then I can zoom in and out. And what if I want to move around in an unconstrained way? Then I'll have to use my other hand and hit Alt on my keyboard and then press my center scroll wheel, and I can move around in my viewport in an unconstrained fashion. So that is how you can navigate around your viewport, and there are several other things that we can do in Max, and we will touch on those in our next tutorials. So I will see you then.